Welcome, everybody. You may recognize the music and you may recognize me as well. You may even recognize the man across from me. Matt SB, fabulous YouTuber, is joining us here for the inaugural, is that the right word and pronunciation? First ever Premier League check-in podcast. Matt, we've wanted to do this for a while, haven't we? You and I are both EFL YouTubers. We kind of spoke about the right time to do it. We think now is it. Matt's got some brilliant Premier League prediction shows. We've got Ipswich in the Premier League. Fear not, everyone. We're not all of a sudden going to start talking about the Big Six every week and ditch the EFL. That will never, ever happen. But we are going to do a bit of a version of the Championship Checking podcast on the Premier League. And we hope you like it. And we hope we get lots of comments underneath saying, what a great idea we're going to watch every week. So a giant welcome to the channel to Mr. Matt SB. You excited about this?
I am. Yeah, we've been going around in circles trying to sort something out. And what perfect timing now with the start of the Premier League season and Ipswich Town's return. Obviously, we've just had game week 1, which we're going to be focusing in on today. But yeah, welcome on to everyone. We're going to have lots of great footballing conversations talking about the Premier League teams. As Ben says, we're not focusing in on just the top 6. They will get a mention, of course, but we have lots of fans of teams that have come up through the Championship to the Premier League and trying to reach out to them. And look, this is really where you want to get to. As much as we love the Championship, everyone's trying to get promoted to the Premier League. So it's a great league, very competitive. And yeah, we've got a lot to talk about after game week 1.
We do indeed. Your 10 results for round 1 were as follows. On Friday night, it was Manchester United 1, Fulham 0. The opening game for Ipswich, well, we'll come on to this. Ipswich 0, Liverpool 2. Arsenal, how many points are they going to need to score this season to get close to Man City? They started with 3. Arsenal 2, Wolves 0. Everton 0, Brighton 3. We'll come to that one. Newcastle 1, Southampton 0. Another 0 points and 0 goals for a newly promoted team. Forest 1, Bournemouth 1. It was West Ham 1, Villa 2, Brentford 2, Palace 1. Chelsea 0, Manchester City 2. And our third promoted team last night actually got a point. It was Leicester 1, Spurs 1. Now, if you watch the Championship check-in, you will know we go to Parkin's pick at this point. We can't do that, but just as good, maybe even better, or perhaps exactly equally as good is Matt's moment. And Matt, you want to...
Yeah, go on. I will take being level with Sam Parkin every day of the week.
There you go. You want to talk to me about Everton to start off?
Yeah, now the first thing I think we need to discuss with these 10 results in general was, I think it was a fairly routine, functional Premier League week. There wasn't any real standout results. There wasn't any shock results. The biggest margin in terms of victory and defeat was at Goodison. And obviously with the home team going down 3-0 to Brighton, we've got to focus in on that. And it's not just the result, but I am worried for Everton. You know, there's a lot of things going on off the pitch as well. And you see a little bit of unrest, maybe even a little bit of civil war between the fan base. It needs unity. And I don't see that right now for Everton. We'll talk about the game itself. This was always going to be a difficult one to predict because Everton, they were good last season. I do think it is worth mentioning maybe having that points deduction last season actually gave them a bit of fire in their belly to go out and get those extra results. And they were very good last year, very good defensively. Didn't score lots of goals. I have Calvert-Lewin as the top scorer with 8 goals last season. Decore got 7, but defensively, they were good. Coming up against a Brighton team here where we're not sure what to expect. Brighton are obviously a good Premier League team, but this is a transition now. Hurzeler comes in. They have spent a lot of money. And look, I want to give Brighton full credit for this performance because they really took the game to Everton. Everton fans will point out they could have had a penalty in this game. But other than that, I didn't have a lot of positives here for Everton. Matoma sets the tone with his goal. Really good work down the right-hand side for that one. Welbeck makes it 2. And then just to really stick the knife in, Ashley Young gets the red card. And then Adingra wraps it up. And I think there was a fourth for Ayari, I believe, which was ruled out as well. So it was really bad. And it's game week 1. I'm not going to say, oh, Everton are going down. It's too early to make those kind of sweeping judgments. But as I said, off the pitch, the takeover falling through, the speculation about Branthwaite possibly going to Man United or even Liverpool, which would be quite the turn of events. I am concerned about Everton here, Ben. I don't look at that team and think there's lots of goals there, okay? They spent 50 million this window bringing players in, and they've brought in 60 million for Onana. But you look at the contribution he's made to Villa. He got a goal on the opening day. And if you're an Everton fan, you're like, everything that could have gone wrong this weekend's gone wrong. I personally think if you stick with Sean Dyche, you've got every chance of avoiding the drop. But is that the position Everton want to be in? This is a massive club, Ben, from our childhood, massive club. Shouldn't just be wanting to scrape by every season, but maybe that's where they are right now.
It's disappointing, isn't it? Because you thought maybe it had bottomed out. You know, they had to take the points deductions and there was 2 of them. And like you mentioned, the takeover, and that thought it was getting somewhere. And you've got the new stadium. So the best case scenario is you bring in Sean Dyche, you ride out the points deduction, he builds a new squad, they move up the league, they're clear of points deductions, they go to the new stadium, and Everton start to build back to what they were, say, in the 80s, where they were winning titles and cups all the time. But yeah, I know what you mean about the civil war thing. If my Twitter feed is anything to go by, the Everton fans were, and maybe that's a bit of it, Matt, that they thought the skies were clearing, and then straight away, first game, bosh, here we go. And I think Sean Dyche has got really good standing as a Premier League manager, but never really goes over too well when you take on the fans. And the comment about that tends to be what it's like here, unless you're winning. What's your take on that?
To be fair, there is an element of truth. I feel like we've grown accustomed over the last couple of years to Everton going down 2s, 3s, 4s at home, and the crowd are not happy. But they shouldn't be happy. They're not going to be cheering the team on. We saw lots of jeering against Brighton. So I think the fans are right, but I think Dyche is also right. But it's hard to bridge that gap, isn't it? I mean, I suppose results is the only way you're going to fix it. But I'm looking at these next couple of games, Ben. Tottenham away, Bournemouth at home, Villa away. There's a real chance Everton hit the first international break without a win or without a point. And like I say, it's the goal scoring. That's really what sets the tone in the stadium. If you lose 3-2, at least you've had your fans cheering and they saw some kind of fight. If you go down 3-0 with a red card, what can the fans take away from that? So, yeah, I think Sean Dyche is probably right to say it. It's not going to go down too well, but it is the truth. But you can understand why the Everton fans feel that way. And like I say, it's because of all the stuff off the pitch as well, with Mashiri and the takeover falling through and everything. But this is not solely Sean Dyche's fault. I personally like Sean Dyche.
I love Sean Dyche.
Yeah, I've said it on record. Like, if there's any manager in this league I want to go to the pub and have a pint with, he speaks really well, really, really nice. But you look at this list now of Lampard, Benitez, Ancelotti, Marco Silva. They've tried every kind of approach here. And Sean Dyche, to be honest, if you look at last season without the points deduction, that was probably their best performance in a season for a few years. So, yeah, it's crazy how we've got to this point. Ultimately, it's one of those where a good run of results or a takeover is the only thing that's going to fix this right now.
There you go. That is our first Matt's moment. What we're going to do, we're going to clip that out, and that's going to go down Matt's channel as well. So if you enjoyed that conversation over on Matt's channel, check in the description down there, and you can come back and watch the full Premier League check-in podcast. And we will very much keep an eye on Everton as we go to Worldie of the Week. So over on the Championship Check-In podcast, Matt, I kind of have to, it's a bit annoying really, because Sam was an ex-player. I kind of have to cede to his opinion on anything technical and say, oh, fine, whatever, you know more than me. But we can both have a go at it on this one. So My worldie of the week in the Premier League, get yours in the comments. And as always, remember, other teams exist other than the one you support, and they have probably scored goals this week that you might want to consider. I've gone for John Duran for Aston Villa. I watched it back a couple of times, and I only noticed on the second time, left foot, left foot, left foot as well. I don't know how many goals you get. First time moves, all left foot. Beautifully swept home by Duran. And it just kind of summed up. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Aston Villa. I just think they're absolutely brilliant getting in the top four. And I think Emery to fight back from being underappreciated at Arsenal is brilliant as well. And I mean, we can talk a bit maybe in a minute about their chances of coping with Champions League and getting back there. But great start winning at West Ham. So John Duran, or Villa's second goal, is going to be my worldie of the week. What's yours?
Yeah, it's a very good goal. I mean, we were just having a conversation before we started, and there wasn't like a goal from outside the box into the top corner that was the real standout goal this week. That's a good goal. And on top of that, it was what that goal meant. It turned 1 point into 3. It was in front of the Aston Villa fans. It gets their season off to a flyer. I've gone for Mbeumo's goal. It was the first goal in the Brentford Palace game. Not if you're including the disallowed Eze goal.
7 disallowed free kicks, yeah.
It's a really tidy finish there from Mbeumo, and the other player who scored in that game, Visa, showing that if they do lose Tony, those two can still chip in with goals. And like I say, really tidy finish. It was him on his left foot, just entering in from the right-hand side of the box, cut in, left foot, bent it into the bottom corner. So I really liked that goal, Mbeumo, for Brentford versus Palace.
And I think with our EFL hats on, Matt, and we're going to go into the weeds here, when Brentford were showing everybody the example of how to compete against parachute teams, one of the first big spends they did, I think it was like 5 million. And the thing you forget about Brian Mbeumo, he was like 20 or 21. He was really young when they spent that money on him. And to see him scoring in the Premier League, I think every EFL championship club trying to challenge and build their way up needs to look at players like that if you do make those right signings in the EFL and you can ride it out all the way up, they can deliver for you in the Premier League. And I know maybe my club and maybe Nottingham Forest have, gone up and bought a load of new players, but you can take players up with you. Just quickly on Villa, Matt, how do you see Villa being able to cope with being in the Champions League? I see Gary Neville, who's quite wise on these things on the Monday Night Football, said it's really, really hard in the first season when you're in the Champions League.
Yeah, you just have to look at Newcastle last season. For a team that's not from the exclusive top 6 to get in there, but by no means am I saying Villa and Newcastle are not massive clubs. I mean, Villa have won the European Cup in 1982, haven't they? So I'm honestly excited. I really like. I know I'm a Coventry fan, and there's some Coventry fans that don't like Villa. I'm really not that. I'm not a zealot. I'm not that bothered. I think it's going to be nice actually to see Villa Park. Say if it's Aston Villa v Real Madrid, how special would that be? I mean, we saw it last season, Ben, when Villa hosted Arsenal and Man City. They beat them both and kept clean sheets. So at that place, the cauldron of noise, I think they can make it really, really challenging for the European teams. It all comes down to how they do in Europe, I guess. I mean, I've predicted them before the season started to stay in the top 4, which is a bold shout. And
I did too, actually.
Yeah. See, it seems to split people here. People have got them in the top 4, or people have them going completely the other way.
Ninth.
Yeah, 9th or something, which the proof will be in the pudding. We will find out. But if they progress in Europe, yes, it might take their attention away. If they don't get through the league phase, it's called now, then maybe that'll turn their attention back to the Premier League. But look, they got to the semi-finals of the Conference League while still being in the top 4 last season. So you look at the players they've brought in as well. They've really given that squad some depth. I think they'll have a good season. And yeah, like you said, got off to a good start, and they were the better team against West Ham. I'm going to add that as well.
So, Worldie of the Week, guys, in the comments, we've gone for Brian Mbeumo and John Duran for week 1. And we're now moving on to We Need to Talk About. Okay, we need to talk about this week. And Matt, we've got to go with our championship teams from last year, haven't we? There is a poll up right now on the community tab on the Benjamin Bloom Football Channel. Go and have a vote as to your thoughts on which team's most likely to survive on the evidence of week one, where, Matt, we had Ipswich having a really good first, I don't know, you tell me, 50, 60 minutes against Liverpool. And then it got a bit loose and, two could have been three, could have been four. But lots of praise and lots of encouragement for the first 60 minutes. We had Southampton go to Newcastle and there was a red card for Newcastle. And I don't know, I'm laughing because it's not funny for Southampton fans, but 74, 75% possession or something mental like that. And they've gone under and lost 1-0. We did get a point on the board last night in the Monday Night Football for Leicester. And I can't believe the old master, Jamie Vardy, is still doing it. But again, Matt, that could have gone 1, 2, 3 Spurs in the first half, couldn't it? Which one do you want to talk about first out of Leicester, Southampton and Ipswich?
We'll go through it chronologically. So Ipswich, Liverpool was up first. And I watched this game on the channel, and literally everything you've just said is true. I mean, first half, if you were someone not watching the game and you looked at it 0-0 at half time, you'd think Liverpool are probably pushing and pushing. And that was true. But Ipswich, actually, for me, in the first half, had the more dangerous chances on the counter-attack. There was a real chance when Amari Hutchinson was through. He sort of slowed down, but then he cut inside and he got the shot off, but he didn't have enough power to really test Alisson. And I think at half time, Ipswich had the slightly higher XG, actually, for people that are interested. I know not everyone is. And you're really encouraged by that, 0-0, and they're actually having some openings. I thought defensively, Greaves, Wolfenden, Leif Davis put in some solid performances. The keeper, Walton, seemed fairly steady to me. And then it kind of carried on from there up to about 60 minutes. And then it was like Liverpool were like, okay, we've got a couple of gears to climb. And that's not Ipswich. There's not much Ipswich can do in that regard. You've just come up. I seriously think Ipswich have a chance. But there's some games where you're like, it's not a disgrace losing here. Liverpool go and get 2 in 5 minutes through Jota and Salah. And then I think Ipswich have done all right there to just keep it at 2. I mean, there wasn't many opportunities. Wasn't it? Yeah, there wasn't many opportunities for Ipswich to get back into it, but don't let it get to 3 or 4 because that then looks like a completely different game. 2-0 is respectable, and I'm not being patronising. It is actually respectable. But if you lose 4, then it's like, that's really not very good. It's not very good for the goal difference, which could be crucial at the end of the season. And next up, it's Man City. So it's a very difficult game. But you get these 2 out the way, and then you got Fulham at home, and that's where you think we're going to find out what Ipswich are about. But I think there's plenty of positives to take.
And they still need to have that sense of excitement, intensity, and momentum at Portman Road by the time they run round to the Fulham game. So I would totally echo what you said. Whereas if you've lost 4-0 and 5-0 in the first 2 games, is everybody beat already by the time Marco Silva and Fulham turn up? What about Southampton then, Matt? Because I wonder if the Saints fans, even though they would have had that down as, if we get out with a point, we'll be happy. I wonder with the red card, and comment if you are a Saints fan, I wonder whether they'll be like, we definitely should have taken something from that one.
Yeah, now I've got the possession, by the way, Ben, at 23-77.
Wow. so on brand for Ross Martin, Matt.
It is, especially playing against 10 men. But there's 2 sides to this I want to talk about. We'll start with Southampton. That before the game, I didn't really give them a chance. I think I had a prediction for 4-1 Newcastle, which it might have been without the red card. But obviously, Shah gets the red, and I'll briefly mention that. I think it's one of those where, although I understand Newcastle fans saying, he's barely done anything, if you put your face in, you're giving the referee a decision there. So, red card. And do you know what? Maybe it really, with it being at St James's Park, it it really worked for Newcastle to have this sort of, all of a sudden the fans are trying to fill that void left by the player being sent off. And if this was at St Mary's, Southampton's fans get on top and, try and capitalise, and they push and they push. But I think it almost suited Newcastle. They got the goal, which was just, it was a mistake. It was Southampton passing it out. It was the keeper, McCarthy, wasn't it? It was a dreadful loss of possession. And then Joe Linton scores. And then Newcastle really doubled down on this. Okay, let's absorb what we can. And it really worked to their advantage. Yes, you can make the argument Southampton, with the extra man, should have at least been able to get a draw out of this. But maybe that comes to the argument of, is there enough Premier League proven attacking experience there? Because you've got Ben Brereton Diaz, who we liked from the Championship, and Adam Armstrong. Neither of them yet to set the Premier League stage on fire. I'm happy to see them do it this season, but just didn't seem to be, even though they had all that possession, an idea of how to break Newcastle down.
No, 100%. And very interesting that you've just spoken about this kind of Premier League ready experience and goal scorers. Because when we move on to Leicester City, and okay, maybe you can't rely on him for, to do it for the whole season, but it is so vital to have people who know the Premier League. And I think in Jamie Vardy and in Steve Cooper, you've got two massive ticks there. Vardy gets the goal, the old master, and some brilliant sledging with the Spurs fans afterwards when he was getting subbed off. And a lot of people are going to be watching that thinking, if that had been Enzo Maresca's Leicester, would they have got a point from that? And as much as Stevie Cooper can be a bit pragmatic sometimes, I think he's great in terms of game management and keeping teams in games. And Vardy said that himself. He said when it got to 40 minutes, we knew we had to get to half time, not let it go, because we can get back in it in the second half. And maybe more Cooper than Vardy, but how important are those two going to be for Leicester this season?
Very. I loved this matchup, by the way, of Postecoglou v Cooper, because I can't think of two more contrasting managers when it comes to defence and attack. Cooper, especially when Forest got to the Premier League, he was very defensive, but they built on that and got loads of 1-0s and 2-1s at the City ground. And that's probably what he's going to have to do with Leicester. We're one game in, but Leicester are already on a point per game, which is encouraging. And you're absolutely right. The thing with Steve Cooper at Forest is he had credit in the bank. So even if they had a poor run, they could refer back to, he's brought us here. With Leicester and all the chaos there, I could see the Leicester fans so easily turning on him. So I think it was so important to go and get something from this game. And to be fair, I did see something like this happening. I mean, I actually predicted Leicester to win as my rogue shout for this weekend. And it could have been. I mean, they pulled it back and then they had some chances. And you're absolutely right. It's about realising when you're 1-0 down, just keep it at 1-0 sometimes. Obviously you want to get back into the game, but Spurs have got a lot of attacking quality. And I think Leicester did well to keep it at 1. And then, look, they didn't actually have a lot of possession, Leicester, but when they got the ball, they made it count. They got forwards. They're actually quite exciting to watch. And Vardy with the goal and gets them up and running. We've got a couple of games we're going to come on to later where they take on Fulham next week. I think that'll be a really nice platform to go off for them. A really good draw against Spurs.
100%. So, at the moment, and this will change, the poll on the community tab says Leicester, 43% have voted for the most likely to survive, based on the evidence of week 1, remember. Ipswich, 42%. Southampton, 15%. Matt, one-word answer. If you're heading over to the community tab and voting in that poll, who's most likely to survive based on the evidence of week 1? Leicester, Ipswich or Southampton?
You've asked me on the evidence of week 1.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to say Leicester, but if you said all things considered, I might lean towards Ipswich, just because of what might happen to Leicester down the road, which we don't want to talk about, but we might have to at some point with the possible points deduction and stuff. But it's difficult to measure. I mean, they've all played top teams, but I would make the argument
that's a great point. Yeah.
Ipswich have played the best of the top teams there, though. But yeah, they've all had difficult games. And then it's so what have we got? Southampton were away, so we'll give them a little bit of a bye. But then they were playing 10 men, so it kind of levels it out. Maybe just Leicester, but I agree with the poll having Leicester and Ipswich as the top two, should we say?
Yeah, you're totally right. That was a hell of a one-word answer as well, Matt. We'll clip that.
Leicester was my first answer, but I'm
correct.
trying
Yeah.
to get Ipswich in there.
We'll clip that one out as well and get in the comments on, has the first week changed anything for you? Certainly really encouraging for Leicester to get off the mark in the way they did. Encouraging that Southampton were competitive. Encouraging Ipswich for 60 minutes, but we don't want to be, damning with faint praise and finding the slightest thing to cling on to whilst these teams are all on 6 points after 13 games or something dreadful like that. So there you go. Get involved in the comments on that one. And we're going to look ahead to next round. Okay, let us know what your mouthwatering matchup is in the comments. This coming weekend, we have Brighton, Man United, Palace, West Ham, Fulham, Leicester, Man City, Ipswich, Southampton, Forest, Spurs, Everton, Villa, Arsenal, Bournemouth, Newcastle, Wolves, Chelsea, and Liverpool, Brentford. Matt, I'm going to stitch you right up here because we did have Fulham, Leicester down as the mouthwatering matchup, but we've just spoken a bit about Leicester. So Matt doesn't know I'm about to do this. I'm going to pivot on him and ask about Aston Villa and Arsenal because you'll look at it straight away where Man City is such a freak show that Arsenal can probably afford like 2 draws in the first 10 games and have to win all the rest of them. And we've just been talking about Aston Villa, can they maintain top 4? And you mentioned they did well against beat Arsenal last season, didn't they? What's your take on Aston Villa versus Arsenal? And even this early in the season, can Arsenal afford even a draw such as a ridiculous? And I love Ipswich, but Man City are going to score 3 points at the weekend, and Arsenal need to keep pace, don't they? Even in early August.
Yes. Just a quick honourable mention. As you said, Fulham Leicester will be a good game down the bottom, and I think Southampton Forest could be a really important game.
Yes.
But yes, we'll talk Villa Arsenal because that is a big matchup, and it was twice Villa beat Arsenal last season because they beat them 1-0 at home, didn't they? And then they beat them 2-0 away, which was, I think that was the result which killed Arsenal because it was in the second half of the season, that wasn't it? I think this is the worst time to play Villa, personally. They've brought in a fair few players, and you can make the argument they've got players to gel. But the argument people are making about Villa possibly falling off is because they're going to be in Europe. Europe's not started yet. So Villa's focus for at least the next month or so is going to be on the Premier League. And we saw that against West Ham. I thought they played really well. So there's no signs of, they're not quite clicking yet. Arsenal obviously looked really good against Wolves. I thought they'd get a relatively comfortable win there. I am struggling to call this, Ben. I could flip a coin for this game. If it was at the Emirates, I'd maybe think Arsenal might get it done. But with it being at Villa Park, I'm not sure. And like I say, they even lost to them in both games last season. So I really can't call it. And what I love here is the matchup between the managers, Emery versus Arteta. And obviously, Arteta's done the better job with Arsenal compared to what Emery did there. But
had longer to do it, Matt, though, hasn't he?
He has had longer to do it. That's a very good point. And Emery's CV in general speaks for itself more than Arteta. The things he's done with Villa, I would not be surprised if Villa win this game. But as you say, can Arsenal afford to lose it when Man City are probably going to win their first 5 games?
Brilliant stuff, Matt. That has been our first ever Premier League check-in podcast. I've enjoyed it. I think Matt's enjoyed it. We hope you've enjoyed it down there in the comments. Let us know your thoughts on the show and what you want us to do with it. The plan is that we're going to roll it out each and every week, and it gives Matt and I the chance to try and talk about some Premier League stuff, whilst also keeping the fan bases of the clubs that we've covered for years and years nice and happy. What we're also doing is I'm appearing on Matt's channel doing the League One predictions over there. So if you're not familiar with Matt, do you want to give a quick plug for the channel, Matt? And we'll try and get some subscribers from over here over to your place.
Yeah. Matt SB on YouTube. Honestly, I just have to say I'm a massive fan of Ben, who kind of no, I'm just a massive fan of Ben, and obviously I feel like you're a lot of inspiration for my own channel. Yeah, it's similarly based, really. I feel like we both focus predominantly on the Championship. I venture out to the Premier League, trying to reach out to League One as well, because the amount of teams that come in and out of the Championship, they go elsewhere. So just English football in general. I'm gonna be doing videos with Ben this season, which is honestly a dream come true for myself. So get involved if you want to see more of Ben and myself.
There we go, and we will be back probably next Tuesday. We're figuring this as we go with schedules and whatnot, but we will certainly be back. And let us know what you think of the concept, the show. Matt SB. Where is he? I'm pointing on the Benjamin Bloom channel on the Premier League check-in